All right. Now, there's at least two layers to this class. The surface layer is I'm going to talk about a bunch of people who had various ideas, various ways of thinking, and I'm going to talk about what they thought, the reasons they gave for thinking it, how they were criticized for this, and then discussing the strengths or weaknesses of their logic. Underneath this layer, there's something deeper, which is thought itself. Meaning how to think about things, how to decide what you're going to call true and what you're going to call false. It turns out that the modern scientific rational way of thinking is not necessarily the way people naturally think. It's certainly not the way that people thought when they started the enterprise of thinking. You can think of it like this. You guys know what cars looked like when they first started making them? Okay. You know, you have a little steam engine under a buggy seat, and then to steer it, there's this long handle, you know, this long bar with a little handle on it, and you go like this, back and forth, and that steers the car around. Anyone seen a Stanley steamer? These old cars? And then cars get, the cars change, they try something and it doesn't work, they try something else, right? The automotive technology is something that has developed over time. If you have a good class in automotive design, the instructor will start off showing you the basic problem of how to create an automobile, how they did it to start with, and then how they went from something that was basically a converted horse-drawn cart into something that's its own thing, like I don't know, Shelby Cobra or Plymouth GTO, where the technology really reaches its peak. Well, you can think about thinking as a technology. When way back in the mists of history, people would think in the sense that ideas would run through their heads and words would spill out of their mouths, but there wasn't really any way of telling good thinking from bad thinking. And what I'm going to talk about here is the people who started the process of thinking good, telling good thinking from bad thinking, and how it developed over time, how rational consciousness got started, how it grew, how it changed, the different kinds of ideas and ways of thinking that were invented and then later discarded on the way. So logic can be seen as a sort of science or a sort of technology that grows and changes over time, and that's going to be another one of the layers here. So you've got the topics of philosophy, the history of philosophy here. This guy said this, this guy said this, this guy said this, this guy said the first guy was an asshole. Right? You go through that, but then under that you see how the very idea and process of thinking, of having rational thoughts, grows and changes over time, is developed, it's invented by these guys. Now, inside that, there's another layer, and that's the layer of what goes on in your heads as you get passed through this material. Because philosophy is fundamentally about thinking about stuff, about looking at ideas and saying, and looking at the arguments that are offered to support them, and figuring out which arguments are good arguments, which arguments are bad arguments, and through that process, eventually coming to a rational basis for saying, this doctrine is true, and this doctrine is false. And you say to a point where you say, this doctrine is true, I don't necessarily like it, it doesn't necessarily make me feel good, but the evidence supports it. It is the best explanation for the information, for the evidence that we have in front of us right now. It's the truth. Being able to sift through all the bullshit and lies and nonsense of the world and figure out for yourself which things are true and which things are false is a vital skill. And part of this course, part of the aim of this course is to give you training and development in the habits of thought, the practices, the attitudes that lead to the kind of mind that is able to figure out truth. To be able to cut through the crap and come up with what's real. And that's difficult and complicated. And so, well, it's complicated. Once you get there, once you start doing that, rationality is actually very easy. It becomes natural after a while. But before you get trained, the world is confusing. So that's the other layer, is training you how to do thinking. And, you know, or giving you some more tools. Maybe you already, you know, have these tools. Some of this, for some of you, this layer will be superfluous. For others, it'll be a totally new thing, and in between. And the way we practice that in this class is we look at the guy's doctrine. We look at the guy's arguments. We might look at a criticism, something somebody else says. And then we step back and we say, well, who's full of crap here? Is this a good argument? Is this way of thinking the kind of thinking that leads to truth? Or is it the kind of thinking that leads to dumb stuff, like the Holocaust, or the career of Britney Spears? What is her manager thinking? Okay, I don't like that kind of music. So, any questions about that? Okay, that's the sort of nutshell on what philosophy is. So, requirements, read and think. And write. Okay, when you get the syllabus, there'll be a list of things that are required. Study all the assigned reading. There will be quizzes. Participate in class discussion if you can. Actually, a lot of people don't like to talk in class. I love participation. I don't want to force anyone into a position that he or she finds embarrassing. So I encourage comments, particularly comments that cut through to the heart of the matter or give a different perspective on what's going on, especially ideas I've never thought of. If you have an idea that I never thought of, I want to hear it so I can repeat it and take credit for it later. I'm no fool. There's a bunch of stuff to do. But, okay, there's some memorization, but if all you do is memorize, you'll fail the class. You have to understand stuff, which means that you will disagree with each other and you will disagree with me, and that will be okay. What I'm looking for on the exams and in the papers is for you to show that you understand the doctrine that you're talking about, right? That you have some kind of understanding of it, some rational understanding of it, and that you can think about it, and you understand the arguments offered for it, and you can repeat them, you can put them into your own words, and you can understand the criticisms. You don't have to agree with any of this. Have you ever had a professor mark you wrong or criticize you because the answer you give, the answer you think is correct based on the evidence given to you, isn't the answer in his head?
Yeah.
Right. I try not to do that. I try to look for your thinking process. So, you can write an exam answer that gives the doctrine as I explained it in class, and then gives the argument as I explained it in class, and then gives my personal instructor's criticism of that argument as given in class. And you show that you understand all that. And then you say after that, but I think this is all wrong. Or I think Professor Young is wrong because. Now there's no problem in saying that I'm wrong. Okay, that's neutral as far as grading is concerned. I never take points off. So if you tell me that I'm wrong about something, and you give reasons that don't make any sense, no problem. I don't take points off. But you give me reasons that make some kind of sense, I give you credit in proportion to how much sense they make, even if I think you're completely wrong. A wrong answer can get credit because it can be wrong based on small mistakes. Right? If you demonstrate a thinking process, then I look for that and I give it credit. Particularly philosophy classes. Philosophy classes, there is supposed to be disagreement because you're supposed to be thinking for yourself. So, I mean, you don't have to disagree with me. That's fine. I don't mind if you agree with me. But, demonstrating that you're thinking about the material is important. Any kind of thinking you do about anything is important, even if it turns out to be totally wrong, because you've done the process. It's like, let's say you're learning to shoot hoops. Let's talk about something that I know nothing about. That you're learning to shoot hoops, you're trying to shoot a sinker, penalty, thing like that. And you have 100 tries. And the first 50 completely miss. Are they wasted?
No.
No. Right. This is how you learn. This is how you practice. A crappy performance, a crappy performance is worth doing as a stage to doing something better. And heck, you get a little bit better every time you try. So it's never wasted. So, I use a point system for my grading. It makes everything just really easy, and I get reliable grades. I use that as a guide. I'm the final authority. If I have someone whose points don't reflect their performance, and I know their performance, I go with the performance. I've never actually done this, but I hold it as an option. So generally, if you've got the points for the grade, you get the grade. If you've got close to the points for the grade, I usually find some way to give it to you. I mean, I hate that. Oh, she's 2 points short of an A. Oh, well, it's a B. Doesn't that drive you crazy?
Yeah.
We don't have pluses and minuses. It's like A or B or C. Oh, yeah, you were really close to an A. You were this close. I really wanted to give you an A, but you were just 1 point short. And all right. take off points, I deduct points. The only thing I deduct points for is missing classes. You have to be in class. You have to be in class if you can. If it turns out you have a good reason for missing class, like you had to participate in a sporting event, like you're on the baseball team, the football team, or the interpretive dance team, whatever. You have a sick relative. You have to go on a secret mission to Afghanistan to assassinate the local head of Al Qaeda. You're a secret superhero and you have to secretly save the world. It was a really, 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 really good party. And you look up and it's, I'm supposed to be in class right now. Where's that tequila? I'm understanding. But generally, be in class, because I've noticed this. The people who skip classes do worse on the exams. And students usually notice this on the day of the exam, when it's too late. So I find I have to do the attendance things. On Wednesday, I will explain how to do the papers. If you turn a paper in early, I give you extra points. Turning papers in early has another advantage. This is a multi-stage writing assignment. You're going to write 3 papers. If you screw one of them up and get an F, then you can write another one, and it will take that grade will take the place of the F. So you kind of get a sort of something that's like a do-over. But you can only do one paper after I've graded and handed back the previous one. You can't do them in parallel. They have to be done in series. How many of you understood the computer metaphor, or the electronic metaphor? One person understood that metaphor.
I kind of got it.
You kind of got it. Great. I'm doing well here. I tell jokes in class. You don't have to laugh. I know they're not funny. I told a joke once, and everyone in the class went. I mean, they didn't even know I told a joke, except one kid, the punker, the guy with all the punk stuff and the painted the jacket sitting like this. Apparently he knew something about anarcho-syndicalism because he laughed his ass off. Everyone go, what's funny? Why is he laughing? Right. Now, okay. The term drop is ambiguous in student culture. If a fellow student says, "Oh yeah, I dropped that class," that could mean 2 things. There's 2 things that could mean. One, it could mean he dropped the class. The other could mean he just stopped coming. If you just stop going to a class, that isn't dropping the class. Dropping the class is going to admissions and records and filing the paperwork, turning in a drop slip. This applies to all your classes. The reason I point this out is instructors have a hard time figuring out who's just sick and who's dropped the class permanently. The only way to make sure that your paperwork is straight is to make it straight yourself. Instructors can drop you if you miss a few classes, if you miss 3 classes in a row. They don't necessarily do this. They're not required to. So if you stop coming to a class, you could end up with an F, and students regularly do this. Another thing is, this is practice for the work world, because in the work world, if you don't file the paperwork, or if you're dealing with the government and you don't file the paperwork, you can often be royally screwed. So dropping is your problem. I try to work with students, but if you think you've dropped the class and I don't, who eats the F? Okay. Tests are not cumulative. And if you have a disability, if anyone has a disability, tell me. Tell me ahead of time. Oh, here's something else to write down. My email address is squiptricks@gmail.com. SQUIPTRYX. I have an official college email account because they made me. I never look at it. This is my email address. If you have any questions, please email me. When I give out the syllabus next week, I'll have my telephone number, which is my cell phone, which is, yes, turned off, thank you. Oh yeah, my cell phone policy, I would like to be really hard-asked and tell you to make sure your cell phones are turned off or silenced before class. But about half the classes I will forget. My cell phone is rung in class. Last semester, it rang in the middle of the first class on the first day. And I have an annoying ringtone. So we usually just laugh when it happens. All right. Now there are certain ways in which I am pretty sure I am different from the vast majority of other instructors. I refer to these as my weirdnesses. Some of these are more weird than others. Okay, when you get the syllabus, or if you go to this web page, you will find links to pages I have created on my website that contain, at a minimum, they contain reading questions. Have you ever read a piece of assigned text and found yourself thinking, what the hell does the instructor want me to know out of this?
Yeah, Old English.
Say again?
Old English.
I'm not allowed to rag on English teachers. I got in trouble for that once. defense, I never said what they said I said. There's a lot of very, very good English teachers out there. A lot of superb English teachers out there. Okay, I have these pages. They have questions that, you know, like, if you answer the questions as you go, you will understand the text, pretty much. Then at the bottom of the page, I have what I call potential exam questions. These are questions that are very much like the questions I will put on the exam. So basically, if you study the book under the reading questions in the online, come to the lecture, make notes, and then practice answering the potential exam questions from that same web page, you'll be golden for the test. No surprises. If you can answer those questions out of your head, you can do the test. So it's basically a pre-test online for every lecture. So it's about as helpful as I can be. Also, on the website, there's other materials that I've added over the years to supplement what's in the reading. Definitions, things, little stories. Could you hold up the textbook so everyone can see it? Does anyone else have the textbook already? Okay, hold that up. Now, the one in the bookstore maybe have a different color at the top. It'll have the same picture. It's substantially the same book. Pages, some of the page numbers may be a little different, but it's close, and you'll be able to. If there's two editions to the book, that's okay because they're very close to each other. If anyone has any problem about that, email me. I will consult my copy and give you the right page numbers. So there's this online help for the reading, supplemental reading. It helps you. Supplemental reading helps me get inside my head. Now, let me tell you about the textbook for this class. Generally, there are two kinds of introductory philosophical textbooks. You can find textbooks that are unreadable. That's one part. Utterly unreadable. You try to read them and you go, what the hell is this asshole trying to say? But there's help. There's other ones that are not unreadable. These are completely wrong. So, oh, I know what this says. You read it, you think you understand it, you do understand it, you know exactly what the guy's saying, but it's wrong. I swear to God, I don't know any other discipline that has introductory textbooks that go so egregiously wrong as philosophy. There's a very popular textbook that I will never, ever, ever, ever use again because I found that the writer got so wrong that it was just no point in having people read the textbook. This textbook for this class is an exception. It is pretty much the most readable philosophy text I've ever found, and it also gets almost everything right. Almost everything. Some stuff it gets a little wrong. Some stuff it gets ludicrously wrong. At the end of the semester, we'll come across a section in the text that I will point out where the guy says something that, logically speaking, cannot possibly be true if you understand it. It is something that is so ludicrously wrong that I am absolutely amazed that someone could say it with a straight face. And this dude's been saying it for like 10 years. But that's at the end of the semester. And part of the aim of this class is to train you guys so that you can recognize when someone is saying something that has to be complete and utter bullshit. Somebody once asked Ernest Hemingway what every young writer should have. And Hemingway said, a bullshit detector. Which I think he was talking about bullshit writing, like bad, when you've written something bad, you ought to be able to tell. But it works in philosophy too. A bullshit detector. Training in philosophy is one of the goals of getting training in philosophy is to equip yourself with a bullshit detector. You know, but there's no such thing as a perfect bullshit detector. There's always some that can slip through. But you know, you start, you make it, you get it better over time. Is this making sense? If I say something that doesn't make sense to you, stick your hand up. Because if you don't understand it, chances are the rest of the class doesn't understand it either. There's a cartoon of people in a class who are all thinking the same thing. This makes no sense with me, but everyone else seems to be getting it. You know, if I say something and 90% of the class doesn't understand what I'm saying, whose fault is it? Someone point at me.
Thanks.
Oh, it might. Okay. No, it's my fault. If I say stuff that you don't understand, I've screwed up. And, by the way, because I'm weird and I think in abstractions, and this stuff makes it so easy for me, I am often completely incomprehensible. And when those moments come up, put your hand up, or you could look at me like this. Or you could say something like, "What the are you talking about, Dr. Young?" Guys know the difference between a philosopher and a good bullshit artist?
Yeah.
You guys know what a pseudo intellectual is? An intellectual is someone who thinks carefully about stuff. That's what an intellectual is. An intellectual is someone who thinks very carefully about the stuff that comes across his way, tries to be logical, tries to pay attention to evidence, knows that he could be wrong. Real intellectuals are fallibilists. They think, well, this is what I think, but I could be wrong.
I think the Patriots are going to win the Super Bowl.
Say again?
Patriots, I think, are going to win the Super Bowl, but I could be wrong.
Patriots are going to win. Okay, that's good to know. If anyone asks, I'll tell them. But that's right. You can be an intellectual about football. Now, a pseudo-intellectual is someone who keeps his nose a little bit elevated, looks down on you, uses a lot of big words, never admits that anything is wrong, and calls you an idiot when you disagree with him. That's a pseudo-intellectual is someone who pretends to be an academic, pretends to be educated, but really isn't thinking. I had two friends, Don and Daryl. Don is a bus driver. Daryl, I don't know what he's doing now. He's a teacher. Okay. But Daryl, hopefully Daryl's better now. But I used to go around saying that out of the two, the bus driver and the guy with the degree in psychology, it was the bus driver who's the intellectual. Because when I sit down and have a conversation with Don, he would think about stuff. Right? He'd pay attention to logic. Daryl was all about looking smart. It's all about looking smart, not about thinking. If any of you have got an interest in Buddhism, this is how the ego gets in the way. The real intellectual, I'm trying to understand. It doesn't matter if I'm ignorant. What matters is I can find out. I can think about it and work it out. It doesn't matter if I turn out to be wrong. What matters is the process of working my way to being right. The pseudo-intellectual or the fool goes, how can you say I'm wrong? I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. Get away from me. Ah. Maybe not that. Maybe not in this one. All right. Is that making sense? You see the difference?
Yeah.
Thanks. God, I love feedback. Okay, now, here's something that's a little more weird. I do reading quizzes. What this means is you have reading due for Monday. Right? It's like 6 pages of that textbook. You read it, you go through the reading questions, whatever. Okay. When you walk in class Monday morning, I will be writing questions on the whiteboard. I'll be writing out a set of questions. I will ask you to answer 2 of those questions. So you'll see a set of questions, maybe 6 questions, and I'll expect you to pick 2 questions and answer them. These questions will be on the reading that you just read. They won't have anything to do with anything you did this week. They'll be on the reading you just read. The reason for this is simple. If you don't do the reading, you will not properly understand, or it will be much harder to properly understand the lecture. So do the reading even if you don't understand it. My goal in creating these questions is I try to create questions such that if you've done the reading, the questions will be screamingly easy. If you haven't done the reading, the questions will be impossible. So do the reading. I try to make the reading easy and short. Yes?
Are those quiz questions for you possible test questions?
No, there's actually possible quiz questions. The quiz questions, the exam questions are going to be something like, explain Descartes' argument for his theory of dualism and how it gives rise to the mind-body problem. The quiz questions will be things like, what's dualism? Or what's Cartesian dualism? Or what's his, a sentence. Oh, and by the way, don't answer in synonyms. Yes, Eric.
Apart from the 3 papers that are required, do you have any other homework?
Any other homework?
Yeah.
No homework. He's been burned once. He was in a class of mine where he had homework and quizzes.
Oh.
Yeah. And I have a hell of a lot of grading to do every week. So now you can see it like homework that you do but you don't turn in, and it gets you ready for the quiz. So you got these reading quizzes. The exam questions are much more elaborate. By the way, if you miss a quiz, if you have to miss a quiz, you can take a run at an exam question and that will make up the quiz. Yeah?
You said that, like, you don't grade the homework, but it just gets us ready for the test, right?
Right. You don't even, it's not even really homework.
Yeah, but that's what gets us ready.
Yeah, you can do that. You can just do those quizzes and stuff. If you do everything on the reading page, you will be so prepared for the quiz. I was going to say, don't answer in synonyms. There's going to be a question next week is what is logos? And that's explained in the text, and it's actually pretty easy. Don't tell me that logos is the scientific way of thinking, because I'm going to come back and ask you, so what's, I'm not going to mark it wrong, but I'm going to come back and ask you, I grade really easy on these quizzes. I'm going to come back and ask you, okay, what is scientific? Beware of synonyms. There are very few synonyms in philosophy. If something has a different name, it's usually a different thing. We're going to have a weird thing with synonyms later in the semester, but generally, if there's 2 different words, they usually mean 2 different things. So logos is not the scientific way of thinking. You need logos is something else, is doing this with this and this. The quiz questions will be easy if you've done the reading. By the way, have you ever been in a class where the professor gives you a certain chunk of work that appears to have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with anything that you're ever tested on, or even the subject of class? Okay. They do that to make the class harder sometimes. I try to keep the material to a minimum. I try to make the readings as short as I can. I want small readings that are very, very carefully discussed. I don't like long readings where we talk about a little bit about this, and a little bit about this, and a little bit. I want something that hangs together. So it's short reading, intensively studied. I want deep understanding of a few topics, because that's the only way philosophy works. A shallow understanding of something isn't an understanding at all. Which brings me to my next weirdness. I teach writing in a way that's different from most instructors. And on Wednesday, I'm going to spend pretty much the whole lecture talking about writing, talking about philosophical writing, and the way I teach it in this class, and what my requirements are.
Yeah.
The writing, as far as I'm concerned, a college writing assignment should teach you how to think about the subject. If the writing assignment does not change how you think about psychology, it doesn't make you a better writer, it doesn't give you a deeper understanding of literature, then it's wasted. Now, the way I teach writing is meant to get you to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into a subject. It doesn't always work out this way, for various reasons. But my aim is to start you off with a shallow understanding of something and then send you back to that subject to get a deeper understanding of it, to say something different, to go deeper into it, to understand it better. You guys familiar with the word draft? Like a first draft, a second draft? Generally speaking, how is a useful second draft different from a useful first draft of the same paper? I'm not talking about wasting time here. I'm talking about doing a second draft that's worth doing. If you do a second draft that's worth doing, how is it different from the first draft? There's a one-word answer to this.
Grammar.
Second?
Grammar.
Nope.
Type.
What?
Second one's type.
Second one's typed.
Second one's better.
That's the same draft, okay? If the only difference between two papers is the grammar, they're the same paper. If the only difference is one typed and the other isn't, they're the same paper. They're not drafts, right? They're the same draft. They're two copies of the same draft.
Different perspective?
See?
A different perspective?
Different perspective. Well, the one-word answer is completely. The most useful second draft of any paper will be completely different from the first draft. You'll probably, if it's really, really useful, you'll have a different thesis. You'll have a different argument. More evidence. Well, maybe not completely. You know, you may have stuff, but you know, you'll use your evidence differently. You might pick different evidence. The difference between a first draft and a real second draft, a second draft that's actually worth doing, that actually makes a contribution to your writing, is that you wrote your first draft, you looked at it and said, well, here's all the ways I went wrong, here's all the ways I screwed up, here's all the things I should have done, here's what I really, really want to say. Okay, Put that aside, crumple it up, rip it up, throw it over there, burn it. Don't burn the bastard! Kick it in the head. Bang! Kill it. Now I can write the paper. Second draft, when you start your second draft, it's like writing from scratch. You can use old ideas. You can use ideas you used before. You can use evidence you used before. You can use arguments you used before. But you don't have to use any of that old stuff. That's gone. You got the value out of it. You don't need it hanging around your neck like an albatross. It's a big seabird. They used to hang it around people's necks. I'm not sure why. But you don't need it, right? So this Odyssey writing is all about rethinking, about taking something you've done before and say, hey, that wasn't as good as what I wanted it to be. Or I can see here there's something wrong. So I'm going to do this over again. See, I don't use the word draft because people think a first draft is the second, a second draft is the first draft with a comma here, taken out here and moved over there. That ain't it. Writing is about thinking. The only point of having people write in college is so that they demonstrate to the instructor that they're capable of thinking. If your writing does not demonstrate thinking, it's a waste of time. Please don't report me to the English department. Has anyone had a writing teacher who did it this way? Had this attitude? No? There's usually a couple. I mean, there's usually a couple of people who had absolutely brilliant English teachers who did this way, or better. English teachers whose boots I'm not fit to lick. I don't believe that. Not the boot licking. I can lick anyone's boots. Right. So, the last weirdness I'm going to write about, well, there's more information about all of this stuff linked to the website. So if you're interested, you can look everything up. And if you're not interested, you can go out drinking until Wednesday. Either, by the way, is good for me. Party all the time. As long as you're conscious in my class and don't snore too loud, or at least don't snore too loudly, I'm good. Okay. The last weirdness of which I will speak today is what I call wrangling. I will hand out a survey form on Wednesday, and hopefully I will remember to get you to fill it in and collect it on Wednesday. What's going to happen is that at some point in the semester I will call up 2 groups to the front of the class, and they will argue a particular claim about the world. It's like a debate, only it's all about logic. It's not about rhetoric and scoring points. It's about understanding stuff. So you participate in teams, you argue back and forth, and I will explain how to do it on the way. It's not a competition. There's no winners, no losers. We certainly do not settle anything. Rather, what happens is you'll participate in a live demonstration of the thinking process in action in excruciating detail.
You get points?
You get points for participating. This is the easiest thing in the class as far as grading is concerned, because it's participation graded, which means you do the best you can, you get full marks. I've only ever had one student get less than full marks, and he had to really work hard to do that. Basically, he wouldn't stay on topic, and he wouldn't bloody shut up. So it's pretty easy to get full points on it. But the point is, all right, the benefit of the wrangling doesn't really go to the people who are up here doing it, because they're in it, they're participating, they're working it out. The benefit for the wrangling is for the rest of the class who's watching and seeing what goes on, because this actually creates a context in which I can refer to the atomic elements of rational thought. That is, we break down rational thought into its smallest possible elements and go step by step by step by step. So what we're doing is demonstrating the thinking process up here before your very eyes. How to think rationally. What rational thought is. Notice that it starts. It's very small elements. And it gives you, once you've done this, once you've seen this in action, if you remember it, if you put it in action, you have the most basic tool of thinking. And that's the aim. There's also the kind of reasoning we do in the wrangle is very much like the kind of reasoning you're going to have to do for the writing assignment. Now, if all this sounds complicated, I want to explain that rationality, thinking, philosophy, is one of those things that once you understand it, it's very, very simple. It's like, oh, this is how you do it. The trouble is, in our society, in most human societies, rational thought is not part of the educational agenda, and it's not part of the cultural practices. People are often punished for rational thought. People are being beaten up for thinking rationally. Heck, one time they burned at the stake. Certainly, and people can be socialized against it. And it's very easy to socialize people against rational thought. And you're under tons and tons and tons of pressure out there, influence from TV, advertisers, billboards, peers, power groups, salesmen, to trying to get you to not think rationally. If you've ever bought a new car from a really good salesman, his whole deal is to manipulate you into buying a car that gives him the best commission. And to do that, he has a number of techniques to keep your brain, the rational part of your brain, switched off. And my ex-wife bought a car from a guy like this once, and he was amazing. He was beautiful. It was amazing to see how he just subtly steered her away from ever questioning stuff. So it was just a beauty to watch. So I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. But it's easy once you master it. Once you master it, it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I've had this happen with the writing assignment. I had a student once do absolutely crappy the first time, absolutely crappy the second time. On the third time she went, oh wait, this is what oh, you mean I do this? And then she went brilliant. Just went from like a D or an F to an A. Because she finally believed that I wanted her to think for herself, to tell me what her opinion was. Not, have you ever had an instructor who says, I want you to think independently, but what he means is, I want you to work out for yourself what I think and then give me back my opinions as though you agree with them? Okay? I try to be the opposite of that. I'm trying to convince you that I'm the opposite of that. I'm trying to convince you that if you see me as the opposite of that, you see me as someone who really wants you to think independently, you will do well on the writing assignment. It's another reason I give an optional extra writing stage so that you can make up for it if you screw up the first one, no problem. By the way, I also want you to take risks. You guys know the difference between judgment and opinion. Opinion is whatever you happen to believe. It's a matter of choice, it's a matter of free will, it's a matter of freedom of conscience, freedom of expression. You are morally entitled to believe whatever you want to believe. But you're not really morally entitled to act on your beliefs, except where those beliefs are backed up by logic and evidence. Because when you start interfering with other people, then morality kicks in. Judgment is a process of deciding what is best supported by the arguments and evidence available to you right now. To make a judgment is to think rationally about something, is to use the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the one thing that goes conscious, rational thought, is to think things through. That's based on judgment. This class is all about judgment. You're perfectly entitled to your opinion. You won't ever be penalized for holding whatever opinion you hold. Never be penalized for opinion. But if it's just your opinion, if you believe it because you feel in your heart that it's right, it won't get you credit in this class. It's another reason you don't have to believe the things I'm telling you. You don't have to agree with me, but you do have to understand the doctrines and the arguments and the logic of it. You have to demonstrate that you're capable of rational thought, even if you don't choose to do it in your personal life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are there any questions? Any questions?
Oh,
Yeah.
Are we going to be meeting in this class now? Or like,
Yes, we're going to be meeting in this class now. Thank you. That was a brilliant question because it pointed out something that everybody needed to know and which I had totally forgotten to even think about. So those are the kind of questions I most like to hear. Yes, we meet in this class, 8 o'clock Wednesday.